Alright, today we're going to be wiring up the controls for the AIRTRONIC D2. I chose to go with the EasyStart Remote Plus. That was just my preference because I wanted to be able to turn the heater on remotely from inside the house on cold mornings and come out to a nice defrosted van when it's time to head into work. So the EasyStart remote comes with, in this package here, the EasyStart remote, the EasyStart remote controller, comes with an antenna, which is this cable here, has the brown connector. Comes with a button that's needed as part of the configuration of the system. That gives you some feedback via an LED as to what's going on when you're setting things up, like pairing remotes. And then it also comes with a room temperature sensor and a Molex type connector kit. And we're going to be hooking that up to the AIRTRONIC's control wires over there. For this job, you definitely want to have some needle nose pliers, wire strippers. I got this Molex crimper, which I think is definitely worth the 50-60 bucks. And then I got a standard crimper here, ratcheting crimper, and some electrical tape. And last but certainly not least, the instructions. So one of the nice things about the EasyStart remote is that it doesn't require a separate control panel that is wired to the heater because it's all remote. So one of the benefits of that is you can actually install all the controls inside the passenger seat or underneath the passenger seat where you've put the AIRTRONIC. And the only wires you gotta run from there are the antenna wire, which I'm going to run up here to the air, or up the beam here and up high so that it gets good reception with the remote, and the room temperature sensor. The only catch with the room temperature sensor is probably not long enough, the cable they give you, to go all the way to the back of the van, but that's something that, you know, it's just a couple wires, so it's easy to extend. So for the high altitude unit, the first thing we need to do is hook this bush housing, this 12-pin bush housing, into the cover cap with lever. And we just kind of snap that guy in there. This is what the high altitude sensor looks like. So this is going to plug right into the bottom of that and clip in. And then this piece is going to have to connect with the control wires from the AIRTRONIC. These are going to need to go into the connector that goes into the EasyStart remote. Okay, so gray, red, and brown, white on every diagram. It's got these guys tied together, so we're going to start with them. To the high altitude kit, everything has to come into the high altitude kit first, and then it goes out of the high altitude kit onto the controller. So we're going to do the high altitude kit first. Okay, high altitude sensor comes with this 4-pin bush housing, and there's actually a small fuse that slips into there. So on this cable coming from the heater, red, yellow, brown, and blue, white. Red, yellow, brown, and blue, white. That's these four. they're going to come in and go into this 4-pin connector. So we got our high altitude sensor, we got 4 Molex pins that we're going to crimp on. We got the blue, red, yellow, and brown. We're going to go ahead and wire strip these about 1/4 inch off the end of each one. We've stripped the 4. We still have the gray-red and the blue-white tied together. Now with our Molex crimper, we're going to go ahead and crimp on these connector pins. This Molex crimper has 2 different crimp sections. One is the insulation, one's for insulation, one's for conductor. So insulation are the bigger prongs at the front. We'll take our blue-white wire, give it a good twist, lay it in this connector pin. So the insulation should still be in that. The higher pins are there. Crimp that down. And a nice pretty crimp on those first 2 high flaps on the Molex pin, and they go over the insulation. I used 3.2 for these ones that come with the high altitude kit. That worked nicely. And then on the conductor, we do a similar thing here. 2.5 for the conductor looks to be correct. There we have it. Give it a check, feels good. So blue and white's done. So what they've got is this here is the XS10 on the diagram. So the red goes into pin 1, yellow into 2, brown into 3, and blue-white into 4. Very small little numbers on here. Really hard to see, but 1 is in the bottom right corner if you got the clip, release clip on top. So red's going into the bottom right corner, yellow into number 2. That is the bottom left corner. Brown into number 3. That is the upper right corner. So when you put these in, the little wings on the Molex connector should be on the sides, and then you gotta go straight in. You don't want to let it twist or rotate. And then blue-white, so we go into number 4. Alright, so there we go. Make sure everything's tight, looks good. And then there's a fuse that goes in here. Somewhere, I think it's pinned. That fuse comes right out, so. Oh, there you go. You just got to give it a hard push and then it snaps in there. Okay, so we've got the high altitude sensor first in the loop. Now we got to run the output from that to the EasyStart remote. Is this connector here, which they're calling XB12. And what we need to bring into there is red, brown, and blue-white. So it says red goes into pin 1. So on the XB12, pin 1 is the lower right corner. Lower right corner. Got it? Red is pin 1. Brown is pin 3. Brown. Pin 3 is the third one in on the bottom. And then blue-white. I go into pin 4, which is the next one down from the brown on the bottom row. There we go. So red, then we skip one, then we have brown and blue-white. From right to left on the bottom row. And apparently the yellow's not used, so we're going to just kind of leave that guy out of the loop for now. We'll figure that out later. Alright, so the button, H.A.K, has a red and yellow that goes into pin 6. Pin 6 is the furthest left on the bottom row. Brown and yellow go into 7, which is top right corner. And then brown goes into 8. So the room temperature sensor, unfortunately it's only 1 meter long, but we can always extend that. But that's got a brown and white and a gray. So brown and white need to go into slot number 9. And gray goes into slot number 10. So this long fuse needs to go in the side here, so you just put it in the left side and pop it all the way in. And connect that up. Yep. So, there you have it. And then of course we have the antenna cable, which we're going to route. And that plugs into the EasyStart remote. So, when it's all said and done, control cable from the heater comes in, goes into the high altitude sensor, comes out into the EasyStart remote, and then we've got the room temp sensor, and we've got the button, room temp sensor, button, and the antenna. Today we're going to make the battery connections for the Espar D2 heater. First thing we want to do, Mercedes has added this nifty little battery disconnect near the gas pedal. We go ahead and push on the red button and release that. Pull it out. Alright. So for this, we had to take the battery wire that comes out of the Espar wiring harness and run that under the floor over to the driver's side. I did that pretty easily with some fishing wire, electrical fishing, it's metal. Okay, so we got 4 wires on here. We got 2 red ones, a brown one, and a red and white one. Now the red and white one I'm not going to use, so just electrical tape that off. I'm going to need some more room to work with on these wires. going to do is open up this sleeve. Terminal. And then there's one, this brown wire will go to ground. So we're going to start with the brown wire. So go ahead and get a connector put on this guy. Alright, so for the ground battery cable, we're using that Molex crimper. So I found the ring terminals worked best in the Molex 4.8 slot. And that was enough to get those crunched down. Let's give it a good tug. Okay, on the battery cable, we got 4 wires. We got a brown wire, which is going to be our ground wire. We've got a red and white wire, which is unused, so I've taped that off. And then we have 2 red wires, one thicker gauge red wire and one thinner gauge red wire. Now those 2 red wires are going to go into the fuse block provided with the installation kit. The thicker red wire is going to go to a 20 amp fuse, and the thinner red wire is going to go to a 5 amp fuse. So first thing we're going to do is strip those wires and get some connectors put on them. Now the connectors that come in this kit are special in that they can clip onto these fuses here. So see, they just kind of pop on there. So once we get these fuses into this block, the fuses go on top, and we'll push the 2 up from the bottom and they'll snap onto the fuse. Then we'll come out of that with the 2 wires that came in the Espar install kit and run those over to the battery terminals. So the kit had this yellow plastic that the connector goes onto. So I'm going to use the same yellow kind of rubbery plastic on the side that's going to go into the fuse. Okay, slide this guy on. Okay, so I used a 4.3 on the wire crimp, and then on the insulation crimp, I'm just going to use the needle nose pliers. Alright, so we got the red done. Get that out of the way. Okay, now we're going to do the thin red. So first we're going to slide the rubber cover over. So in the kit there's actually different Molex connectors. So for the thinner wire, you got to find the one that has the thinner crimp wings, the second set in, the crimp wings for the wire, and those need to be smaller since this is a thinner wire. So we got it in there now, and we're going to go ahead and crimp that down. Okay. Alright, so we've got the thick wire with its fuse connector, thin wire with its fuse connector, and the ground wire with its ring connector. The wires that came with the kit, we're going to need to add ring connectors on the other end of the thick and thin wires here so that we can hook them up to the battery positive terminal. Smaller crimp on the wire. So the thick wire's done, and then the thin wire. That's on there good. Okay, all set. Going back to this terminal block, the wiring diagram shows F1 through F3. Red wire. And it's the next 20 amp red wire. And they do go in vertical actually. Let's figure that out. And then we get the 5 amp thin wire. The 5 amp thin wire going out. Alright, so 5 amp fuse goes into the 2 thin wires. Like that. 20 amp fuse is into the connectors for the thick red wire. Bingo! And we can tidy it all up with this nice little cap. Alright, we're just going to hook up the ground wire, so I'm going to use this existing ground connection here under the driver's seat. Alright, now we're going to do our 2 positive terminal cables. So we got the thick wire with the and the thin wire. I'll probably come back later and set this up so we can mount this fuse in a better location. Alright, on the driver's side, I've got the Espar fuse block. I just attached it here with some double-sided Velcro. It was tape that had Velcro on the other side, so that it just snaps right onto the bottom of the existing fuse block. Does the trick. Alright, now we're going to hook up the control cable to the heater unit. So this was just a little tricky. In order to make that connection, you first have to pry back this little black tab and then pull out on the red plastic here. That'll slide back, and then once that's done, you'll be able to take the cable coming out of the Espar and make this connection. Okay, let's put this over. So now I've hooked them together, and now I can snap that shut, and it will hold the 2 of them. Okay, so everything's kind of a mess right now. We'll clean it up, but basically I've run the antenna from EasyStart remote unit up the pillar. I'm going to have to insulate this because the instructions say not to touch it to metal, but I'm placing it there for now just for testing purposes. And then the temp sensor I'm just placing down here for now. That's going to get extended and routed to the back of the van later. Okay, now we're pairing the remote. The first thing I did was hold down the button for about 5 seconds till it starts flashing. Then I put the remote into the Add E mode by arrowing over. That mode will erase any other remotes that have been programmed. Okay, now we're going to set the time. I notice this is in 24-hour mode. We'll see if we can change that later. It is Tuesday. Uh-oh. We got another language here. Alright, let's see, this is the temperature we want. Okay, so we're doing the test run now of the Espar, and we've had to cycle this a few times already because I don't think the pump has gotten fuel to the unit just yet. Quickest way to restart it is to just pull the 20 amp fuse because the heater itself, even if you shut it off, has like a cool down cycle of a few minutes, and it's just annoying to wait. So it's starting up again here. Hopefully this fourth time will be a charm. So fourth time was a charm. I'm booting it the fourth time. I didn't hear the ticks from the fuel pump, and I was like, what's going on? But now I know why. Because the unit was finally getting fuel and able to make hot air, so it only has to pump more every so often. Alright. Alright, today we're going to clean up and just finish the installation. We've already tested the system and know that everything's working right, but we've got all these little controller boxes and sensors that need to be attached. So we're going to go ahead and mount stuff up. So what I'm going to do for the two sensors is I just bought a piece of decking brace. This is like that you normally use to hold two pieces of wood together. And there's already some holes here on the frame that we can screw this onto, and then these individual units are nice because they can actually be mounted different ways, and I'm going to be using these two mounting holes on the top to mount them up under the plate, so they'll be kind of hanging down and out of the way so that we can put the seat back on. Alright, so I wasn't able to get two holes on this particular brace plate to match up with the two that were already there. That's not really a big deal because that's what drills are for. Alright, so we got those two screws in that'll hold the plate. For that I used an 1/8 inch bit. For these bigger holes on mine, they also don't line up exactly with the holes on the EasyStart remote and high altitude, but a 532's bit will allow me. I marked off where the holes would need to be, and I'll just go ahead and drill those out. Alright, I noticed a lot of metal filings, so I went ahead and put some paper towel down just to catch those, just so it doesn't fall all over the cabling and electronics and for some reason short something out. Alright, so now we're ready to mount the EasyStart remote and the high altitude sensor to our new mounting plate. So here you can see how these will mount up underneath here. That'll also allow access to the connectors underneath if I had to ever reach in through the service window here to disconnect something. Now to hold those in place, I went ahead and got some screws and some nuts. They'll go on the back side. And those are the same size as the screws I used here